Being a Longhorn is opportunity, pride, achievement, community, safety. Being a Longhorn is a choice to become a hero, to lead, to thrive in any setting. Being a Longhorn means immersing yourself in fine arts, learning at your own pace in Montessori, starting your path to college in elementary, earning a college degree in high school. The pride of being a Longhorn lives on long after graduation. Educate, empower, inspire.
Good evening and welcome to our 17th Digital Parent University. My name is Alicia Davis, Director of Family and Community Engagement with Cedar Hill ISD. We thank you for being with us this evening. This evening's presentation is going to be on spring testing, most commonly referred to as our STAAR test. I do want to let you know of a few upcoming events that are going to be taking place next week and the week after. So we have a STEM-inspired announcement which will happen at 6:00 p.m. on next Thursday, the 8th. This announcement is going to be something very special. So that's all I'm going to say, but please be on the lookout for it. It will be broadcast live both on Facebook and YouTube, again at 6 p.m. on the 8th. Also, next Saturday, we have our virtual pre-K showcase. If you have any little Longhorns who are going to be age 4 in the upcoming school year, please make sure you register for this showcase so that you can get information about our pre-K programs at our elementary campuses. So you can go to chisd.net/pre-K showcase to get all of that information and register. Also, on the following Thursday, April the 15th, we have our next Trustee Connection session. That one will cover facilities and also give an update on our Lone Star governance. So now I'm going to let you know that we have two talented, esteemed presenters and panelists this evening. From academics, we have Dr. Charlotte Ford. She is our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction. And we have Mr. Brian Ward, who is our Testing, Accountability, Research, and Social Studies Coordinator for the district. And he is going to start this presentation by telling us a little bit of what we can expect as far as the test is concerned. All right, Mr. Ward.
Thank you so much, Ms. Davis, for that wonderful introduction. As we know, there's a lot of information that has come out in both the press and in podcasts about what the STAAR assessment will look like for the 2020-2021 school year. This is our opportunity to kind of walk through what TEA has actually done and said, but also talk to you about the district plans for bringing up as many scholars as possible. And then we'll also talk about some of the ways we're going to work on addressing skills that may develop as we work with our students. So for the 2020-2021 school year, TEA has officially waived all state mandated consequences for scholars in grades 3 through 8, including those associated with not taking the assessment. It is also waived all consequences it is authorized to waive associated with not taking the STAAR assessment. Just quickly to give you an understanding, as you know, or may or may not know, in grades 5 and 8, any scholar who is not successful on the STAAR assessment has multiple opportunities to test. This year, they will only have one opportunity. However, also in grade 5 and 8, in order to be promoted to the next grade, your scholar has to be successful. That is not in place for this school year. Now, if you can go to the next slide. I did mention that TEA has only waived what it is authorized to waive for high school scholars. As you know, our high school scholars take end of course exams in English 1, English 2, algebra, U.S. history, and biology. TEA is not lawfully authorized to waive graduation requirements associated with end of course assessments. This means in order to graduate, the scholars still must have either passed the STAAR EOC assessment, scored high enough on a substitute assessment, the SAT, ACT, TSIA 2, or will meet the requirements set by an individual graduation committee in their senior year. It is important to note that, yes, graduation requirements connected with STAAR EOC are still in place. In addition, TEA requires that all state-level testing is required to be administered to scholars. Now, due to the security and nature of the test, scholars must be physically present at school in order to take these assessments. This is not something that can be done virtually. And so, obviously, our traditional scholars who are already at school will be given the assessment automatically. However, there is the opportunity, but not necessarily requirement, for online flex learners to elect to come to campus to complete their assessments. So, in order to do this and to alleviate some concerns about increasing or allowing your child to return to campus, the district is committed to the safety of our scholars. Therefore, and this is big, on STAAR testing days, only those scholars who are participating in testing will be on campus. All other scholars will take online, virtual, asynchronous instruction. In addition, testing rooms have been identified and will reduce the student to teacher ratio and also allow us to increase the amount of social distancing between scholars. Our campuses are working at setting that at about a 10-to-1 ratio to ensure that all social distancing can take place and that your scholar would not be in a classroom with large numbers of scholars. And finally, online flex learners and traditional learners will remain separated for the assessment. So they will not be in the same assessment room. So as I said, online flex learners may elect to come to campus in order to complete the assessments. As we know, especially in a year like we've had, having data to identify student needs is extremely important so that we can start working on mitigating any losses and continuing each scholar's commitment to excellence. As such, the district would like as many scholars as possible to participate in the STAAR testing and the TELPAS assessment windows. And again, we are working to create the safest test environments that we can create. So our official statement for our online flex learning. The district strongly encourages all scholars to take part in the STAAR assessment. However, we understand and completely respect the individual decision of each individual family to make the best determination about returning to campus on test days. In order to facilitate planning, there was a questionnaire that has gone out or will go out that was shared with your campuses for 4th grade and 7th grade writing, English 1 and English 2, to determine the number of scholars that will be joining for campus assessments. Please note, if you wish to take the assessment and you did not fill out that form, it is okay. Any scholar who is on campus on that day will still be administered the assessment. So let's take a look at what this looks like in reality when we look at our April testing timeline and plan. So in April, we have 2 sets of assessments. The first is on April 6th, and that includes our grade 4 and 7 writing and our English 1 end of course exam. So for our scholars who will be testing in person, that includes our 4th grade, 7th grade, all English 1 scholars currently enrolled in English 1, or any scholar that still requires English 1 for graduation requirements. All other scholars will be participating in remote asynchronous instruction. This includes our elementary, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, first, second, third, and fifth grade, our middle school, sixth and eighth grade, and our high school. Any scholar not enrolled in English 1 or not requiring English 1 for graduation will spend April 6th doing remote, virtual, asynchronous instruction. The second day of testing in April is April 8th, that Thursday. Now, the only people this actually will involve are our high school scholars, and those scholars testing in person will be the English 2 scholars and scholars that still require English 2 for graduation requirements. All other high school scholars not in English 2 or not requiring English 2 for graduation will be asynchronous remote instruction. Because this does not involve our elementary and middle schools, all elementary and middle school scholars will be in their normal setting just as they were today. Next slide. So then, you can go back. One more. Go to the chart, please. There we go. Now, that is our April assessment timeline. And you notice we went into a little bit more detail. However, similar events are going to take place in May. And so we wanted to make sure parents had lots of time and have an understanding of what this is going to look like, specifically when we do get into May. So in the first week of May, on the Tuesday, May 4th, Algebra 1 end of course exams will be administered. So that means in person, all Algebra 1 scholars and those retesting Algebra 1, needing them for graduation, will be there. High school scholars, non-testers will obviously be asynchronous remote instruction. So for middle school, because we do have a number of scholars who are taking the Algebra 1 end of course exam, middle schoolers in grades 6, 7, and those 8th graders not in Algebra 1 will also be asynchronous on May 4th. May 5th, we do biology, and this is only at the high schools. So all our biology scholars and retesters will be on campus testing in person, and all of our high school non-testers will be at home asynchronously receiving instruction. May 6th is our U.S. History Day for the high school. So all U.S. History scholars and retesters will be in person. All non-U.S. History testers will be asynchronous. In addition, on May 6th, at the middle schools, grade 8 science will take place. So all of our grade 8 scholars will be in-person testing, and our grade 6 and 7 scholars will be asynchronous virtual on that day at home. And then on May 7th, yes, on a Friday, our grade 8 only, grade 8 social studies will take place at that time. So all grade 8 scholars will also be there on May 7th. And grade 6 and 7 scholars will participate in asynchronous instruction on that day. Again, on the week of the 4th through the 6th, all elementary scholars are not affected, and so will continue their instruction in their current setting. So now is where it gets a little bit trickier. So on May 11th, all scholars at grades 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 will take their math assessment on that day. Now, on May 11th, only our traditional scholars will take the test on that day, except for grade 5 because they have an additional test in this week. They will actually only serve our face-to-face scholars, traditional scholars. At home will be all our pre-K, kinder, first, and second, and all of our flex learners, third grade through eighth grade, with the exception of grade 5. May 12th is the reading exam for our traditional scholars. Grade 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 traditional scholars will be in-person testing, and then all pre-K, kinder, first and second, and all online flex learners in third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth will participate in asynchronous instruction at home. On the 13th, all of our fifth graders, as well as our online flex learners for grades 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8 will take place at testing on that day. And then all of our pre-K, kinder, first and second, as well as all of our traditional scholars for third, fourth, sixth, seventh, and eighth will be at home doing asynchronous instruction. Finally, on May 14th, the online flex learners will be on campus taking the reading assessment. That will take place on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th for online flex learners only. All traditional scholars and all pre-K, kinder, first, and second will participate in asynchronous instruction at that time. Now, on the week of May 11th through 14th, all high school scholars will be in their normal setting. Before we move to this, please understand that the reason for having students asynchronous is, again, a safety concern for all of our scholars, and to encourage as many of our scholars who are currently online flex learners to come and join us on campus to complete the STAAR assessment. While it is a family's decision, the district does hope to see as many as possible at that time. And now for the plans to address our learning loss, I will turn this over to Dr. Ford for just a moment so she can kind of talk what the district is planning to do to help our scholars get back on track and to continue to excel.
Thank you, Mr. Ward and Ms. Davis. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk to you all about the plans for learning loss. Research suggests that our scholars have a significant learning loss as a result of the pandemic, not just academically, but also from a social and emotional standpoint. So the district is working very hard to help ensure that we put processes in place to mitigate the learning loss, as well as ensure that our scholars are growing socially. As far as accelerated instruction, so previously, if a scholar failed the STAAR assessment, particularly in grades 5 and 8, they had to have SSI in order for them to be promoted. But that is not the case as a result of the pandemic, but we do have to offer accelerated instruction. So Texas Education Code requires accelerated instruction in the applicable subject whenever a scholar was not successful on the state assessment. And scholars who did not take the STAAR assessment are considered not successful and will require an acceleration plan to be developed based on available data. Scholars not successful on EOC will have an opportunity to test in June. So typically you have in grades 5 and 8 where our scholars have multiple opportunities to pass the reading and math assessments. That will not occur this year. So there will be no student success initiative for promotion. However, we do have to offer accelerated instruction for those scholars who were not successful on STAAR. Accelerated instruction will be June 4th through July 2nd. It's actually June 4th through July 2nd for grades 5 and grade 8, and those scholars who did not meet expectations on the Algebra 1, English 1, English 2 Biology, and U.S. History EOCs. And there will be more information to follow. So as soon as your scholars receive their results, the campuses will reach out to you to offer an opportunity for your scholars to actually receive accelerated instruction, and accelerated instruction will be face-to-face. We will also have literacy and numeracy academies for our our little Longhorns. And the purpose of these literacy and numeracy academies is to target numeracy and literacy skills that may have been deficient as a result of the pandemic and the learning loss. So this will be sent out to your little Longhorns by special invitation. So we will have our academies in June for pre-K and kinder, and in July for first and second grade. And these scholars will have a special invite based on their NWEA MAP data, which is our universal screener that we also use as a predictor for those scholars who will be successful on STAAR for grades 3 and up. We also use our progress monitoring tools such as Achieve 3000, Smarty Ants, and iExcel, which is our math progress monitoring instrument. So to mitigate learning loss, we have several opportunities for our scholars to come onto campuses and face-to-face in order to actually achieve and build their skills.
All right, so it looks like it's that time for our live Q&A session from both YouTube and Facebook. And we do have a couple of questions already to go from YouTube. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Ms. Cole asks, in regards to the STAAR testing day, once testing is completed, are parents allowed to pick up their testers as soon as the test is over?
No, once the scholar is dropped off on campus, they are expected to be there for the remainder of the day.
Thank you, Dr. Ford. Ms. Cole also asks, May 11th, grade 8 in person, who are in Algebra 1, are they asynchronous?
That is a wonderful question. You are correct. For the grade 8 scholars who will take 1 the week prior, they will not be testing in the 8th grade math. We do not double assess. And so those scholars will be asynchronous on that day. Thank you so much, Ms. Cole. That is a wonderful question.
All right, we have another question. This one's from Facebook. Omika asks, can scholars opt out of part of the STAAR test? I guess she's talking about virtual scholars.
Yes, and so when I'm looking at my virtual scholars, so what we did is for our April assessments, we did send out the questionnaire that you can fill out for just the April assessments. The May assessments, there will be a new form and they can come in. Basically, according to the state, any scholar who is in attendance on campus on testing day will take that assessment. If they're not there for that day, for a particular day, they obviously will not take that assessment and will simply miss the opportunity to collect the data on that particular assessment.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. All right, the next question is from YouTube. Camellia G says her scholar took Algebra 1 last year when the STAAR was skipped. Will the test have to be taken this year?
Thank you, Camellia, for this question. This is a wonderful question. So any scholar who took one of the EOC subjects, English 1, English 2, U.S. History, Biology, or Algebra last year when there was no STAAR exam at all, if they received credit for that subject last year, the state has waived all requirements for that subject. So long as they received credit last year for the class, they will not have to retake or take the Algebra 1 assessment in this case for our scholars.
And the next question from Alicia is pretty much the same. I have a current senior. Last year, the STAAR was canceled. So does she have to go take the biology exam to graduate? Oh, well, it doesn't say that she took it, though. So
yeah, looking at this, one of two things could take place. Either, yes, they will have to come to take the exam, or your campus may assign an individual graduation committee, may assign an alternative assignment or activity for our scholar to complete the requirements for STAAR graduation. I would reach out to my campus directly and ask about the IGC and your biology exam that will take place in May. As long as they are only missing 2 assessments for graduation, an individual graduation committee can meet and, like I said, make an alternative assignment. I would get in touch with my campus, either the test coordinator and or their counselor, and they can give you more information.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Deidrea asks, has the survey already gone out for the April exam?
Yes, it came out from your campus, directly from your campus. And if you did not receive that, please reach out to the campus and ask to speak to the test coordinator, and they'll make sure that you have a copy of that as well.
Thank you. Robbie asks, is a STAAR test required for high school students? What happens if they fail? Will they be retained?
So when it comes to high school, it's not a matter of retention or not retention. That is purely based on the course grade. What happens is they will have to take that assessment during the opportunities presented. So for EOCs, there is a June assessment, there's a December assessment, and then there is the spring assessment every year. So your child will have multiple opportunities to retake the assessment. However, we know that the further away from the course, sometimes the trickier it can be to complete. But they will have multiple opportunities, and no, it will not have them fail a course. It's just that they will still have to pass the assessment for graduation requirements.
Awesome, thank you. Denova asks, if we choose not to take the STAAR test, will the student be required to take the course in June or July? And this is an 8th grade virtual student.
So no, they will not be required to take the course. As mentioned previously, the scholars will, the 8th grade assessment will not cause a scholar to be retained as it has in the past. So no, they will not be required to take the assessment or take the course in June or July. However, the state does require us to provide accelerated instruction for scholars that do not test. So we cannot retain them or make them retake the course if they pass. However, we do have to offer accelerated instruction for that scholar if he does not or she does not take the test.
It kind of goes in line with the next. My child has an underlying health condition and is opting out of STAAR. Will he be required to attend accelerated instruction in the summer face-to-face if community transmission is still high? This is a 4th grader.
Currently, accelerated instruction as a 4th grader, we're focusing on 5th because they're transitioning to the next grade level, and we want to make sure that we are catching those scholars before they move to the next campus. So this year, we're just going to focus on accelerated instruction for grade 5. So currently, for your 4th grader, the answer is no.
Thank you, Dr. Ford. Ms. Cole asks, do we have a testing day for the TSI?
Yes, we are working on, and that plan will go out for the TSI. Depending on the grade level for the scholar, 11th and 12th graders will be taking this at the end of April. And then in May, our scholars who are in grades 8 will actually take the TSIA at the end of May. In reading, our 9th grade scholars at the same time will take the TSIA assessment in math, and all of our 10th graders will take both the reading and the math assessment for TSIA. And then we do have a handful of scholars who will be invited earlier based on need for like our early college academy at the high school. We'll be working on a specific date for them as they need that for enrollment into their college courses.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Kim says, what about 9th? I may have missed it. I'm not sure exactly what she's referring to.
I think I understand, and you're right. Okay, so once you get to high school, the end of course assessments are not directly tied to grade level, but to the course they're enrolled in. So a 9th grader is normally enrolled in English 1, Algebra 1, and Biology. So those would be the assessments they would be taking. But There are scholars in ninth grade who are not taking the algebra because they took it the year prior or were scheduled to take it the year prior. Same thing. We have some eighth graders who are technically algebra EOC students, even though they're eighth grade scholars. So when it comes to EOC, it depends on what the scholar is enrolled in. If they're enrolled in English 1, English 2, U.S. history, biology, or algebra, that's the assessment that will line up with which ones they need to take. Most ninth graders will take the Algebra 1, Biology, and English 1 assessment.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions that want accelerated instruction to be explained a little bit more.
Okay, accelerated instruction is where we will actually take the skills that the scholars were not successful on in the STAAR and actually have assignments to target those particular skills. If scholars are virtual and they choose not to participate, then we'll just have to target their skills either based on their IXL data or their NWEA scores. But accelerated instruction is essentially a plan to target skill deficits for our scholars.
Yeah, and I always think of accelerated instruction as our opportunity to make sure that a scholar is ready for success in future years. That for some reason there was skills or specific information that they needed either a little bit more time with or that wasn't clear. And this gives us an opportunity to make sure that that's not a gap that will continue to grow as we move forward in years.
Thank you. Deidria asks for clarification. My seventh grader can take the STAAR virtually?
No, no assessments given virtually for STAAR. They can only, if they are to take the STAAR, they have to come up to the campus and complete the assessment there on the campus. There is no way right now the TEA the STAAR assessment can be given virtually to scholars.
Thank you. TX says, can you address TSI and ACT substitutions for EOC?
Yes, great question. So for the TSI or ACT substitution for end of course assessment, and also SAT is in there, there are specific targeted scores tied to the college career military readiness for TSIA, ACT, and SAT. If a scholar takes the assessment for STAAR and is not successful and they scored high enough on one of those assessments, that can be used to fulfill the graduation requirement for that scholar. In other words, let's say a scholar did not take or did not pass the Algebra 1 assessment. But when they have the ACT or TSIA, they score high enough to meet college readiness indicators. That score can very specifically be used to substitute for that EOC assessment as far as graduation requirements are concerned. And thank you, Ms. Meganson. I haven't seen you in forever, and I miss you.
Oh. Okay, Dana asks, will accelerated learning take place after the end of the school year? Apologies if they missed the dates.
Yes, accelerated learning will take place at the end of the school year, and it depends on your scholar. So we have for our pre-K and kinder scholars, if they're the young scholars, it's going to be June 4th through July 2nd. For 5th and 8th as well. And then for those scholars, if they fail their EOC, they will have to come for accelerated instruction prior to taking that EOC, which is, I believe, June 21st through July 2nd. So those are the dates for acceleration. And yes, it is at the end of the school year. We're also exploring the option of having the literacy and numeracy academies for grades 1 and 2 in July. So yes, it will be at the end of this school year.
Thank you. Alicia asks, my child took English 1, Algebra 1, and Biology last year. Does he need to come take both on the test dates?
Perfect. Great question. So for assuming that your child took the class and passed it, they had to receive credit for the full class last year. But if they passed the English 1, Algebra 1, and Biology, their assessment and requirements for graduation are completely waived. Those tests will not count for the scholars who took those classes and passed last year.
Thank you. This is from Sally Jeremy. Oh, wait. Am I understanding this correctly? We have the option to opt our children out of taking the STAAR testing? If so, I haven't received anything to choose whether or not I want to opt my children out.
Okay. And like I said, definitely reach out to your campus. Now, the first questionnaire is only for 4th and 7th grade writing, English 1 and English 2. We will have a different questionnaire go out in May. This way, a family can explore what the current situation is in their decision making. But if you decide to opt out, there are basically 3 ways. We would prefer that you fill out the questionnaire so that we can make appropriate plans. However, if you don't fill out the questionnaire, but do not bring your scholar to school for that day, they are basically opting out of the assessment. Or you can contact your campus test coordinator directly and just let them know our scholar will not be participating in the STAAR assessment. And if you've not, and like I said, they will be able to reach out and make sure that you get the information that you need. But in reality, it's really about whether or not your scholar is at school that day. Even if you quote unquote filled out the questionnaire and said you're not, but decided that your family that, okay, we're okay with it, and they bring them to school, we will still test your scholar. If the scholar's not there on that day, obviously we will not test the scholar. So the questionnaire is just to help with our planning.
Thank you. Cynthia says, I have a high school student currently enrolled in U.S. history. Is he required to take the test in May?
So again, as a virtual scholar, it is the option to bring them to campus for the assessment. But remember, because U.S. history is an end of course assessment, if he does not take the assessment this May, he will only have June, December, and next spring as opportunities to go back and take the test and meet the graduation requirement tied to U.S. history.
Thank you. Lovely Me asks, was the survey mailed out or was it emailed to the scholars?
The campuses mailed it out to the parents of the online flex learners.
Great.
Thank you. Deidrea asks, are the accelerated instructions only for current 5th and 8th graders that opt out of taking the STAAR, or for any student that opts out?
So currently for the summer, accelerated instruction is for scholars that are in 5th or 8th that are not successful on STAAR. And those scholars that decide to opt out is considered as not being successful. So currently for the summer, yes, 5th and 8th graders that are not successful on STAAR, whether that being take the STAAR and do not receive a not meets expectation, that's all. Approaches, meets, or masters in grade 5 or 8, then yes, they will be encouraged to come to accelerated instruction.
Brian, your friend TX has given you some
love.
Thank you.
Dana asks, how long are the accelerated learning days?
So that depends on the grade level. It's not listed on there, Ms. Davis. So for elementary and middle school, it's from 12:30, and for high school, it's longer. It's from 8 to 3 because we need that time to make sure that our scholars are successful on the EOC. It's only 6 days for the high schoolers before they have to take that EOC again. So high school days are longer.
Thank you. Tamika states, my scholars are virtual 9th graders. If I opt them out and they do not take the STAAR test in April, clarify one more time, will they have to take this school year's STAAR test at another test date or year?
Yes, that is correct. If they opt out, they will still have to take that assessment in order to graduate. Now, again, every year, your child will get 3 opportunities one in December, one in the spring assessment, in the April-May assessment, and one in June. So they will have opportunities to test, but yes, the graduation requirement is still in place, as TEA is not allowed to waive that for our scholars this year.
Thank you. At this time, I do not see any additional questions. So, of course, we will be here until I don't see any more, which could be now. If you do have additional questions, please make sure you're asking us. Hopefully you're watching this live so you can ask the experts the questions. Yes, Robbie, thank you so much. Robbie has another question. How will you socially distance the children for testing at the high school? My child has been virtual all year and is nervous about reporting to campus due to COVID.
So a couple of things we're doing. Obviously, by at the high school, thinking about our scholars taking asynchronous instruction who are not participating in testing, we've opened up additional teachers and additional classrooms for scholars to take the assessments in. And we plan to utilize that so that we can use our space effectively and make sure that your scholar who has been virtual all year, and I understand the nervousness, I really do. It's nerve-wracking for us as well. And I understand the family decision as well, but those give us the opportunity to spread out testing, to make sure that classrooms are small, very, very small, and that they have plenty of room between them that's well in excess of the 6 feet.
Thank you. Good stuff. Ms. Cole wants to know if there is a practice for the TSI.
So currently there are some sites. I will tell you Khan Academy does have some sites for college readiness that will help you practice. There is nothing right now completely available, and I'll explain. The TSI underwent a change this January. It went from the TSI to the TSI A2. And so it's a slightly new assessment. So if you know anything about TSI, our scholars used to take that TSI assessment in English, in reading, writing, and math. Well, they've combined the reading and the writing, and they've streamlined the math. And really what they've done is the other thing is they've helped align it better to the state standards versus national standards in the TSIA 2. So that's one of the things that they've done. However, I will tell you that I've had a number of our scholars work with the TSIA 2 or the college readiness through the Khan Academy, and that's a really good resource for us to utilize.
Thank you. Kim asks, if the 9th graders do take the test and are unsuccessful, what is their next step? Are they retained? You're muted, Dr. Ford.
I don't know how that happened. They're strongly encouraged to attend accelerated instruction this summer so that they can take the EOC again in June. They will not be retained.
Right.
So 9th graders, I think it's a misconception. So once they come up to middle school, you can be retained. 9th graders are not retained. So scholars graduate from high school based on the number of credits. It's not based on retention or promotion. So you will not be retained if you're not successful on STAAR. The next step would be to attend accelerated instruction.
And then also plan to retest in June.
In June, yes.
Thank you. Donova, I'm sorry, asks, if we opt out of the STAAR test in May, 8th grade, will their educational record reflect 2020, 2021 as unsuccessful?
Oh, that's a great
No,
question.
it will not say unsuccessful or failed or anything like that. It will just show as an absence. And I will tell you right now, everybody across the state, just like we know about last year, we know why there's not a record there, but it will not say unsuccessful and it will not say failed or anything like that. It just will say absent for that year's assessment. We've had, scholars in a normal year absent. and that's what it says. But it does not reflect negatively on that scholar.
That was a great question.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right. Omika says the district has learning plans for all grades for elementary scholars except for fourth graders to get prepared. I don't know.
District have learning plans for all grades for elementary scholars except fourth graders to get prepared. I do believe that, all grades, all content areas have learning plans because we've actually taken assessments in fourth grade writing. So they should have a learning plan for your scholar to help you get prepared.
Yeah.
I would,
Alicia.
I'm sorry. I would just tell that individual, ma'am or sir, I don't see your name right now. Okay, Ms. Campbell, to reach out to your campus principal or your campus AP to ask for some support because they should have taken a writing assessment, which would have given them some data in reference to whether or not your scholar is prepared for their writing assessment.
Thank you. All right, Alicia says to be sure, high schoolers who took classes last year when the STAAR was waived do not have to go back and take those tests if they passed the classes last year.
Correct. That's correct. So if they passed the classes last year, Mr. Is he muted?
I was.
Oh.
I would say thank you, Ms. Sanders, because that is exactly right. And that is a wonderful way to say that, and probably a little clearer than I was. So I apologize, but it's a yes. If they took the class and passed, they do not have to go back and take those exams.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Georgie says, my 7th grade son started school with you from Mexico. Will he be taking the exam in English or will it be available in Spanish?
Unfortunately, after grade 5, so starting grade 6, there is no Spanish version of the assessment available for any of the assessments moving forward. However, there are, based on the decision of your Learning Accommodation Committee for our linguistically accommodated scholars, they can make certain accommodations to help your scholar. I would definitely reach out to your campus and make sure that you talk to the LPAC chair to see what accommodations are in place for your scholar.
Thank you. Omika has another question. The district has a learning plan for all grades for elementary except for fourth graders. Why is, she's talking, the accelerated learning plans. So she means that the district has an accelerated learning plan for all grades for elementary except for fourth graders. Why is that? Fourth graders missed taking the STAAR last year, and this is their first year of testing. And then she corrects herself and she says, sorry, accelerated learning plan.
But there are other ways to identify whether or not your scholar will be successful, even if they did not take the STAAR last year. We've taken 2 NWEA assessments at the beginning of the year and the middle of the year, which will give your teachers skill plans for your scholar to help them be successful on the STAAR that's coming up. We also have IXL data and Achieve data. IXL is math, Achieve 3000 is our reading data. So there are multiple data points that your teacher should have to ensure that your scholar is successful. There's also the writing curriculum-based assessment that was given to help the fourth grade teachers prepare a plan for the writing assessment. So there are multiple pieces of data that your teacher should have to prepare your scholar for the assessment, although they did not take the assessment in the 3rd grade. And also be mindful that 3rd grade standards and 4th grade standards are different. So they're going to be tested on different standards this year. And I understand how some people take a look at the 3rd grade data to actually prepare an accelerated learning plan for our scholars moving forward. However, we have multiple data points that we've not had in the years prior. And I keep saying NWEA MAP, which is our universal screener, which gives our teachers a learning continuum plan to help our scholars with any deficits that may be there as a result of not testing or any type of learning loss as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah. And Dr. Ford, I believe I believe she gets. I believe her question was, when you look at the accelerated instruction slides, there was no mention of
Oh,
third or fourth grade.
oh, okay. No, not fourth grade. So as I mentioned previously, what I'm trying to do is ensure that our scholars that are going to the next, like from elementary to middle, from middle to high, that we actually mitigate any learning loss or skill deficits prior to they go to the next level.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ken asks, we didn't receive the results of the writing assessment for fourth grade. How do we get those results?
The writing assessment, the curriculum-based assessment that I mentioned before, I would reach out to the campus leaders to get the results for that assessment.
Yes.
Thanks
And
very
or
much.
your campus, your scholars teacher as well. Their
Mhm.
ELAR teacher should be able to give that information to you and discuss anything that they've noticed.
Thanks. Kiana says, if the ninth grader isn't successful passing the STAAR test in the summer, do they still proceed to the next grade?
Yes, they will still move forward. However, they will still have the EOC necessary for graduation requirements. So it doesn't affect their promotion grade level wise, but it can hold them back at graduation time. So that's why we encourage them to take as many opportunities to take the assessment as possible. However, it will not mean that they'll still be a ninth grader next year.
Thanks. Georgie is wanting to say about the scholar that recently enrolled. This was just two months ago. This was regarding the assessment being in Spanish. Well, let me go back up to this one.
Yes.
Yes, so.
And yes, and listen, we completely understand, because it is one, your scholars trying to learn a brand new language in a brand new location. There's all kinds of things in place. When we sit down and write the accelerated intervention plan or talk about, how we're going to help our scholars, do not think it's going to be a negative against your child. They understand that they've only been here for 2 years. The
Months.
I'm sorry, 2 months.
Mm.
On average, it takes between 4 and 6 years for any scholar to truly immerse and become fluent in a new language. And by the way, for us adults, it takes 8 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we understand, and it will be considered when we're discussing your child.
Thank you. This question is from Nikki. If your scholar has been virtual all year, does he have to come in to take the STAAR test? I'm sorry, I just logged in. It's okay.
No,
It's okay.
that's okay, Ms. Jackson. I'm
Yes.
glad here to answer questions. So they do not have to come in to take the STAAR test. They cannot take it virtually. If they are not on campus on the assessment day, they will simply be marked as absent, and we get that. However, we do encourage them to come to take the STAAR test. It is ultimately, though, a family's decision, and the district will not, we respect that family's right to make an individual choice. So they do not have to, but we are encouraging them to.
Thank you. My Joy says, is accelerated learning the same as summer school?
Yeah, it occurs during summer school. So yes, it's not the same as, but it occurs during, because summer school has multiple programs as a part of summer school. They have accelerated learning, which is typically for those scholars who are not successful on STAAR. And we had another component, although we're not having it this year, for those scholars that are not successful based on their grades. So I will say that it's a part of summer school, but it's not the same as summer school.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Annette, you said, what was the answer to this? I don't know. I'm not sure what comment you were referring to. I don't know. I do apologize, but you can ask your question here, and we'll make sure we get it answered. Lisa says, if they pass that class last year, you're saying they don't have to retest? U.S. history is a required test for 11th grade. If they passed the class last year, are they good for graduation?
As far as U.S. history is concerned, yes, they are 100% good for graduation. Again, any scholar who took and passed, received credit for the class last year for EOCs was waived, and it is not part of their graduation requirement at all. It's basically as though that test did not happen for them. So it's not like it'll basically just show waived for, and it's the actual code is COVID-19 waiver. That's actually on their graduation paperwork. So no, they're fine for graduation, assuming they took and passed the class last year. They're good.
Thank you. Deidrea is asking, the survey came through the mail or email. Cedar Hill High School is in the house, and they're saying email.
Yes.
Yes.
For Cedar Hill High School, email. Shout out to Cedar Hill High School. Now, I don't see any other questions right now. And we have about 5 minutes. So if there aren't any additional questions, you know what happens towards the end, and we're going to get there pretty soon. I didn't know, Dr. Ford or Mr. Ward, did you want to say anything else? Since we do have some viewers this evening, not sure.
I would like to just take a second to thank everybody for joining us. We know this can be a very confusing decision. If it makes you feel better, it's just as confusing for us, and we're having to keep up with it every day. What really excited me, though, is I got to see a lot of names that I've interacted with over the years, and some, people I haven't been able to say hi to in a long time. So it did the heart warm, and I appreciate seeing so many names and faces that, or not faces, but at least seeing names that I've worked with for years. So I appreciate that, guys.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I want to say again, thanks a lot. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either me or Mr. Ward. If you have any questions that you feel that you didn't get an opportunity to ask, or if you need clarifying questions based on our responses, if we needed to explain a little further. So please feel free to reach out to one or both of us, and we'll be glad to answer your question.
And again, I don't see anything, so here's the banner. You know what this means. It's time to go with 3 minutes to spare. Thank you again, families, for joining us this evening for our Digital Parent University on spring testing. Hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you,
Thank you,
parents
guys.
and friends. Good night.
Bye.